Hey there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be using some products that are new to me. I only bought a couple just because I wanted to kind of just see what I thought of them before I went too crazy. And so what I'm doing is I've got a couple of tags. I'll only show you making the one, but it's just a black tag. It's nothing special. It's actually cardstock. And I wanted to see how this would work. So I've got some Distress Oxide sprays. I've got the Mermaid Lagoon and Wilted Violet. And you want to shake these side to side to get these babies activated. And I'm just going to spritz these on, put some droplets on there. And that's, yeah, I just want to see how these would work. And so far, I'm really loving them. Loving them. I can see why people want the inks and the oxide sprays because they're fabulous. So I'm drying this with my heat tool. As you can see, it does dry back quite a bit, so it lightens up. And then I'm going to put that back in my box and do a little bit more blue splatter because I just didn't have enough. And even a little bit more purple, I think. Yep. And then I'll set that off to the side to dry. And I'll start working on the rest of my cards. So I'm doing 2 cards. And I have the My Favorite Things Puddle Jumper stamp. I have this in my Mini Misty, and I'm stamping this with Memento Tuxedo Black ink onto some Express It cardstock. I've said this a zillion times. These are my favorite for Copic coloring. And so I'm just going to stamp that out a couple times, just moving the paper down. And I'm not going to show you the coloring of both because it's really pretty similar. But I'm going to start off with some E00. This is kind of my go-to color combination for skin tones. So I'm starting with E00 and I'm going to go back in with E11. And I'm doing that for both of them. I'm going to end up doing it for both of them. But those are my go-to colors. And I like to start with my lightest color first and then put the darker on and then blend that out. And then I'll move on to my hair. So I'm starting with YR27. He's going to be a little bit of a redhead. And then I'll go over that with E99. And I found this color combination because I was looking at my hex chart. And I'm actually not going to blend this out. I really like the variation that I have there. So I figured I would just leave it as is. Then I'll move on to his pants. I'm using B06. I want it to be nice and bright. I thought that kind of matched the Mermaid Lagoon. And then I'll go over that with B26 just to add some low lights. And I won't blend that out either. It's kind of a small area. Then I'm going to move on to his boots. I'm using T5 and T7 for his boots and also for his umbrella. I end up using the C's for the other little boy. And I use a different color hair for the other little boy as well. So I'll just blend those out a little bit, and then I'm going to move on to the umbrella. And I'm doing this in sections. Typically, when you are using Copics on a big area, you don't want to outline something. So you wouldn't want to like, oh, I'm going to outline all that and then color and fill that in, because you will see the color lines, as you can tell here. So what I would typically do is I would try and work with a small area and just kind of work my way out. But I plan to go back over that. And now I'm adding my shadows. So I'm acting like my light source is coming from the left-hand side, so that the darker, or maybe it would be coming from the right-hand side, I don't know. I'm just making it so that my darker shadow is definitely on his, well, I guess when you're looking at it, on the left-hand side. And then I'll blend that out a little bit, and then I'll add a little bit deeper just to make sure that that shadow is differentiated. And like I said, I use the C's on the other little kid. Then I'll move on to coloring his raincoat. And of course, you have to go with yellow, right? The traditional slicker raincoat. And so I have Y15 for my lighter shade. And I'll come in and shadow that with some Y38. I don't know why I put the cap up like that. It's not like you can read it. So it's Y38. And I'm just adding those shadows. I will end up coloring or trying to fade some of that out so it's not as harsh. And then I'll move on to his shirt, which was just a YG67. And for some highlights, I'm grabbing my Uniball Signo gel pen. This one is about out, and as you can tell, I'm really trying to get it to work. And I keep trying and I keep trying, and then I finally realize it's just not going to cut it. So I end up chucking that one and getting out a new one, and that one works out just fine. So I had used that other one for quite a while. But I will tell you, and I think I said this in the last video, the trick to using those is definitely to not let them sit for months on end. And then I fussy cut those out, and now I have some circles that I cut out with my large circles nestabilities. I have some tumbled glass and broken china distress oxide ink, and I am using my Vivace makeup brushes to blend that on. So I blended on the tumbled glass there on the bottom, and then I'm going to grab the broken china and I'm going to blend that on the top. And then I start to realize that my fingers are they're going to get the color kind of to come off. So I will end up grabbing, and I'm cleaning off my brush in between on just a microfiber cloth, so I will grab just a Post-it and I'll have that taped to my fingers basically, and that way I can work around the blending without worrying about getting finger marks all over that ink. And I'll just keep blending until I'm happy, and then I'll clean up my mess because I'm using this on my glass mat, and I will flick some water on there because obviously he's got an umbrella, so it has to look like it's raining. And we all know that water and distress inks or distress oxide inks go well together. So I'll wipe that up, and then once it's dry, because I did use my heat tool to make sure that it was dry, I grab my white gel pen once again, and I'm trying to make it look like raindrops. I want random raindrops all over the back, and this is really very simple to do. It's just drawing straight lines and being very random about it. I would say the better option, and I figure it out later on, is your raindrop would be heavier at the bottom, so you'd actually want to draw from bottom to top if you're doing it. Right now I'm still drawing from top to bottom, but you would probably want to, and like I said, I figured out eventually, but go from bottom to top, because your biggest part of your drop is going to be where you put your pen down first. But I like it. I think it ends up looking pretty good, like random raindrops. See there, I'm starting to figure out the raindrops will look better if you actually flick upwards. Once I figure out how I kind of want my cards to be placed, I'm going to put the string, which is basically some white twine, back into my tag, and then I'll just tie a little bow. Sorry, I'm off screen there. I tend to do that. I get in the zone and I end up doing things off screen. And now I'm ready to stamp my sentiments. So I've just got some black cardstock from my stash. I've put my embossing buddy all over that just to keep the static down so I don't get random embossing powder where I don't want it. I'll pull off my sentiments, and I've got my Versamark ink pad, which is just a clear sticky ink, and I will stamp each of my sentiments on the bottom of this cardstock. There's some really cute sentiments in this set, and it's a fairly inexpensive set. Like I said, this is from My Favorite Things. And then I'm going to cover that with some white embossing powder. This is an ultra fine white embossing powder. And then I'll pick up my mess because I seem to make a mess lately. I don't know why. I just get going and then things get knocked over. So then I'm going to use my heat tool to heat that until that is smooth and melted. And you can tell just by checking it in the light. I trim that down, and then I'm going to grab the My Favorite Things Essential Fishtail Sentiment strips and line those up, once again off screen, with just some washi tape that I have. And I'm going to run this through my Sizzix Sidekick because it fits perfectly and it's small, so why not? And I'll do it with the other one as well. And then I'm ready to start assembling. So I'm going to use some liquid glue on my tag. And as you can tell, one of the tags I had blue on top, purple on bottom, and this one I have purple on top, blue on bottom. And I like the different variation. I can't decide which one I like the best, but I like them both. And then I'm going to set that off to the side to dry underneath a stack of books. Imagine that. My desk is so crowded I actually have a stack of books on it. And then I'll pull that out and think about the placement of my circle. And I'm going to start covering the back of my sentiment and the back of my images with some Scotch foam tape. And I've just trimmed this down so it'll fit just fine on the back. And then I'll use that liquid glue on my circle once again. Put that down, set that off to the side to dry, and grab the other one to do the exact same thing. And then I'll pull the other one out and start peeling off all the backing paper on everything. So you can see I did this guy with like a dark brown hair. So I'll grab my T-ruler so that I don't put my sentiment on a little too wonky. And then I'll peel off all the backing paper on my image. And I'll adhere him down as well. For a final bit of embellishment on both of them, I decide to grab some Simon Says Stamp Moonshine Confetti. And I've got just my liquid glue and my crystal katana. And just so you know, the circle that I made out of watercolor paper. That's just the Strathmore watercolor paper. And so once everything is down, then I decide I do want a sentiment on the inside, which would have probably been better in hindsight to have done it ahead of time. But I'm just stamping that on the inside of each of those, and that will finish off this card. I love how this turned out. So if you like this card, go ahead and hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by.